Many farmers blamed the railroad owners for making money at their expense. You see, at the time, the railroad companies charged high prices to ship their goods to market, and that created problems for farmers. Farmers decided to organize, and in 1867, they created the National Grange. The word grange is an old word for granary. Membership grew very rapidly. The National Grange campaigned for political candidates who supported farmers' goals, and they called for laws called Granger laws that would, for example, regulate the railroads' rates that the railroads would charge. The power of the railroads over economic life and death on the plains was due to the fact that there was no other viable transportation alternative. Farmers, however, tended to believe that they were laboring to support parasites who would produce nothing tangible but simply living off the production of others. Farmers also distrusted townspeople, especially those in larger and more sophisticated places who tended to put cosmopolitan airs. They sensed that the people in towns viewed them in a condescending ways as rubies or hicks. By contrast, they tended to see themselves as producers of basic commodities that sustain human life, and to see the merchants, bankers, and elevator men in towns as parasites who lived by manipulating farmers. To push effectively for reform, however, to actually change anything, farmers realized that they needed to organize. The Farmers Alliance included many who sympathized with farmers. They were one of the first national organization of farmers. They were active in politics. They created the Ocala Demands. The membership in this organization grew to more than 4 million, mostly in the South and in the West. It was not only the railroads, but money issues too. That caused problems for farmers. Due to overproduction, after the Civil War, there was a decline in agricultural prices. That hurt farmers because they reduced their money to pay back their loans. Mary Elizabeth Lease, a member of the Farmers Alliance who was best known for exhorting rural farmers in the United States to raise less corn and more hay, famously said, "The great common people of this country are slaves, and monopoly is their master." The politicians said we suffer from overproduction. Overproduction, when 10,000 little children, so statistic tells us, starve to death every year in the United States. We will stand by our homes and stay by our firesides by force if necessary, and we will not pay our debt to the loan shark companies until the government pays its debt to us. Mary Elizabeth Lease. Since 1873, the United States had been on the gold standard, meaning that all paper money had to be backed by gold in the treasury. Farmers did not like this gold standard, and instead they wanted the unlimited coinage of silver and to be back the paper currency with silver. Farmers Alliance favored expanding the money supply by monetizing silver. Expansion of the money supply would inflate prices, including farm prices, and make it easier for the debtors to meet their obligations. Many farmers began backing political candidates who favored free silver coinage. One such candidate was William Jennings Bryan of Nebraska. Farmers realized that in order to get the far-reaching changes that they wanted, like the regulation of the railroads or the coinage of free silver, they would need to organize to elect candidates that would help them. At a convention in St. Louis in February 1892, an alliance of farmers created a new political party and a movement, Populism, the movement of the people, which was born with the founding of the Populist or People's Party in 1892. The short-lived Populist Party called, among many things, the government to own the railroads and the telephone and the telegraph systems. Opponents said that they wanted to do away with capitalism. They were considered in their day radical. On July 4th, 1892, the new party held its convention in Omaha, Nebraska. The party's Omaha platform for the election of 1892 called for an unlimited coinage of silver and paper money, cheap money, and they also wanted a national income tax, the direct election of senators. They wanted the direct participation of people in the government, and the high point of the Farmers Alliance came at a meeting convention in Ocala, Florida. Again, they wanted the government ownership of the railroads, telephones, and telegraphs, the Ocala Demands. And to gain the vote of workers, the Populists backed an 8-hour workday and limits on immigrations. In 1896, the Republicans nominated William McKinley for president. McKinley was firmly against the free coinage of silver. The Republican Party supported the gold standard, which would make money backed by the same amount in weight of gold. The Populists had to decide whether running their own candidate, and thus splitting the silver vote, or supporting Bryan. They chose the latter. He was a very clever politician who favored bimetallism, or free coinage of silver. This is a Populist Party cartoon. It's titled Swallowed. It's from Puck magazine, and it shows a python snake with a head of William Jennings Bryan as the Populist Party and is swallowing the Democratic donkey. The backing of the currency was a very important campaign issue because people regarded paper money as worthless if it could not be turned in for gold or silver. And because silver was more plentiful than gold, backing of currency with both metals would make currency with less value available. And it would stimulate the economy. It would help the farmers who had been struggling. However, retaining the gold standard would provide a more stable but expensive currency. By putting more money into circulation, the effect will be inflation, prices rising, the value of money decreasing, and more people would have money. But by retaining the gold standard, there would be less money in circulation, causing deflation, causing prices to fall, increasing the value of money, and fewer people with money. The late 19th century was a period of deflation in which prices and wages fluctuated but generally declined. Economics 101. So Bryan gave a speech called the Cross of Gold speech at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago in 1896. There he spoke on behalf of Free Silver platform, and it is one of the most discussed speeches in the history of American public addresses, and in which some critics believe won him the convention's nomination for president. He supported bimetallism, or free silver, which he believed would bring the nation prosperity. He opposed the gold standard and famously said, "If they dare come out in the open field and defend the gold standard as a good thing, we shall fight them to the uttermost, having behind us the producing masses of this nation and the world, supported by the commercial interests, the laboring interests, and the toilers everywhere. We will answer their demand for a gold standard by saying to them, you shall not press down upon the brow of labor this crown of thorns. You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold." But Bryan faced a difficult campaign. He had very little support from the big cities where consumers feared inflation because that would make goods more expensive. The voters of the industrial Midwest and the big cities with this fear brought McKinley into office. McKinley's victory in 1896 marked an end to the Populist Party and the Farmers' Alliance. The Populists, having nominated the candidate that lost, well, that meant the end of their party. The party lingered for nearly a decade but never recovered from its defeat in 1896. In the South, the Populist Party had to unite white and black voters if it hoped to succeed. However, the Democratic Party successfully used racist tactics such as warning that a populist victory would lead to Negro supremacy to diminish the appeal of the Populist Party. Most of the voters who supported the Populist Party returned to the Democratic Party in 1896. Regardless, although they lost, they were a successful third party in U.S. history because later their goals would be realized. Despite its shortfalls, the Populist Party is an American success story. They are the enduring embodiments of the successes and endeavors later achieved by the late 19th and early 20th century progressives.